Hey, everybody.
Hi there.
Tracy.
Hey, Steve. Hey, Gail.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning. Hello.
Hello.
I think we might have some extra people on the call today. I invited all of our map makers.
Awesome. More the merrier. Welcome.
Hi.
I need to.
Hello.
Hi, Sasha.
How's it?
It got cold here.
Yeah, it's like 19 degrees out. We had like 5 inches of snow.
Wow.
And the day before it was 70 degrees.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
here it was like
Crazy swing.
90 on Sunday and it's 40 today.
Yes, weird, isn't it? It's like, okay, it's winter. I get it. Mother Nature's just irritated. She is so irritated.
Yeah, she's not in the mood for us right now.
No.
All right, we've got quite a few people here today. Give everybody another minute or two to join, and then we can jump into the agenda. I'll drop the link into chat.
Need to do it.
Oh, Tracy beat me to it.
Woo.
So all the Ortelius map makers out there, are they able to sign in? Will they have access to be able to sign in?
Sign into the Zoom.
No, I put their name on the attendee list.
They should.
Yeah.
I just was able to edit it.
Okay.
Yeah, this room doesn't require authentication.
Okay, great.
Then the doc is publicly writable.
You guys were living on the edge.
Nothing bad's happened yet. Fingers crossed.
Be prepared to drop the whole meeting based on that.
Right.
Knock on wood or something.
All right. Reminder, sign yourself in if you feel like it there at the top. In the agenda doc, I will share so everybody knows what we're looking at. Cool, a bunch of people signing in. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're gonna start with the Ortelius proposal. Pretty packed agenda, so we might not get through everything. SIG ML Ops roadmap. Terry is supposed to be joining up. Terry's on the call to discuss the published SIG ML Ops roadmap, and then just a couple other administrivia things at the end that we can always do over email if we don't get to them. All right, with that, let's jump into the Ortelius proposal. Tracy or Steve, do either of you want to take the screen back over and present as we talk through this, or should I do it?
Would you like us to walk through the proposal, or you want us to just walk through a demo? What would you like to see?
Let's start with the demo. I guess that's more exciting. People can look through the
Okay.
proposal themselves after.
Well,
so.
then let's turn it over to Steve, and then
All right.
he can walk through the proposal as well.
Yeah, but just at a high level, as Steve gets ready, I guess I'll stop screen sharing so you can take over. Ortelius has submitted a proposal to join the CDF as a project. So Steve is going to show us what Ortelius is, and then we can take a quick look at the proposal.
So just to give you some background real quick, one of the goals of Ortelius is to focus on the organization of microservices. And we use microservices loosely because we don't care how big they are. If somebody has an implementation that is a WebSphere ear file that's serving up a microservice, or if it's a Lambda function. But one of the key things that we have is the ability to organize those microservices. So one of the things that we've introduced in Ortelius is the concept of domains. And a domain hierarchy allows us to really follow a domain-driven design pattern and organize where we want different types of similar microservices or patterns to be grouped together. You'll see in the proposal where we talk about a marketplace, where we're going to take this domain hierarchy and expand it out to not only what's internal to an organization, but what's global across the open source communities. So we've actually reached out to Los Alamos Labs out here and Sandia National Labs. They have a program that I got to follow up to see if we got approved. We should have, to have them do some work for us, where we've asked them to go and find in Los Alamos and Sandia and universities, what are the domains, what are the microservices, what's running on Kubernetes, those open source projects that are out there, and let us know about them. Because one of the things that the government's really good at is hiding things, and we want to bring this forward. And same with like universities, you know, what did they have? Because what we're seeing is these projects coming out of the scientific and also on the financial side, where we have open source projects that are going up against public data, but that the people writing it don't want to run their own Kubernetes cluster and do all that support and stuff like that. They just want to keep this core part, deal with the scientific aspect of it, the programming, and then make that available for people to consume. So with the domain-driven design, we can see we have many different domains here. This example is just some raw data that we have for some test data. I'm going to jump over to another demo here where we have some better data that we can look at. So in this case, we have our purchase processing, which is one silo or one domain, and then our store services. And then underneath that, we have the ability to further catalog those services at that level. We've run into companies. So what we've done is we've really looked at this side of things as the API or microservice developers. So this is where we're going to be cataloging those services at that level. We've had people that have written 3 different single sign-ons for a single company. And then they decide, you know, they figure out down the road that they're trying to implement 3 different single sign-ons. So they have to throw 2 of them away and then rewrite to adopt the other one. The goal of the domain-driven design is to really expand across business silos. So in this case, we have our email service, our catalog services, our cart service, et cetera. So this is the domain catalog for the API microservices developer. But also, if we look at the consuming side, we can still support the traditional lifecycle, the dev, test, prod. And this is where our integrations into the CI/CD tools come into play. As things move down the pipeline, we can reference where something is from the consuming side, where it is in the pipeline as well. So we have that capability as part of that process. Any questions on domains and the ideas that we have around expanding it out to a full marketplace? Okay, let me jump back over to this one. And we'll look at how those are going to come into play. Let me believe it's going to be this one. So one of the things that we'll see is, like in this case, this application version is at the global level. So this is like at the highest level of the whole catalog. But we can classify it down at that level to the different levels and silo it out based on our domain-driven patterns. Over on the right, we have our dependencies. Like in our test data, we just threw a few dependencies at it to map it out. These are all component versions that are being consumed by the application. So what we're doing is we're looking at it from the application consuming versions of microservices at that level. If we go and take another look at it, we can actually see, let me move my screen around a little bit. We can actually see our domain hierarchy in another view where we can actually drill down and see how things are organized at that level. So we get the tree view as well. If I had components that are outside of my domain, I can be the consumer of them. And through the security model, I can consume them, but not update them as part of that process. This layout can be driven through not only the UI here, where you can move things around, but also it can be file driven, and it can be produced out of the CI/CD process at that level. So, like I said, we have the application consuming the components. We'll go ahead and dive into components themselves, and this is where we're going to see who's consuming me. In this case, my component name is A12. I'm being consumed by the demo app as part of that process. I'm going to jump over to the other one where we have some cleaner data that we can actually look at here. Oh,
hey, Steve.
Yeah.
How's it going? I'm Isaac. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
How did it know what is consuming me in that previous diagram or the previous view?
Like I said, let me go into this one. We'll get some cleaner data other than the
Okay,
test
cool.
data. So we'll go into this one. So what we're going to do is, if we look at our starting point, in this case, let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so we can.
Come with me, baby.
So we have two base versions here. We have the 4th of July and the Labor Day sale are our base versions. So the base versions are our starting point.
Daddy
This
is
is
the toy and the
this
Spanish
is
book. Daddy, show him the head, nose,
really
and
quick,
tail.
if you're not speaking, can you please go on mute? Thank you.
so our base version is our starting point, and the developers are the ones that typically know what the layout is. So developers will give us that information and let us know that their application at the starting point is consuming these versions of the microservices. From there on out, we can then start automatically through the CI/CD process. It'll start self-maintaining itself. So if I add a new version of the ad service as a new build, I would come out and create a new version of the ad service, which is the component, and then that would result in a new version of the application as we go through forward. So the base starting point is the information that we need to grab. We are working on some ways to I would say like reverse engineer a Kubernetes cluster, for example, or one of our team members is working on dealing with AWS and the GKS over there, scraping things out of that to come back to our starting point. One of the problems is people they'll try to use like a namespace for grouping services together, but my ad service may reference do a transaction to another namespace, for example, and we want to build those relationships in as well. So it's a starting point, but from there we need to have the developer look at what's the relationships that they have, and then we'll be able to maintain going forward. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that totally did. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep. So what we'll do is you can see here where we have multiple versions that are coming out of the build process. So if we dive into like cart service here, we have the integrations into Jenkins and the CI tools. This one happens to be Circle CI, as where it got the job that created it. And we can see in the middle is our component with all the consuming versions of the applications that are consuming this version of the cart service. Through our plugins, we want to grab information about what was created, where did it go. So this was pushed off to Quay. This is the digest, the tag that was used over in Quay, and the commit that was triggered the whole CI process. Because we want to link together what a developer is doing to what's being produced. And then from there, once we know that this is being produced, we can now link it to who's consuming it. So we're following the chain of the relationships of what's happening from the developer all the way out to the endpoints of where it's being deployed to as part of that process. In this case, one of the things when we do deployments with Ortelius, this case we're using a Helm chart to do deployment. It could be an operator. It doesn't matter to us under the covers what's happening as far as deployment. One of the key things is that we want to record that this component was deployed to this environment, and keep track of those relationships as part of the process. Some other things that we grab as part of it. Oops. We can store key value information, so config maps, any of that information that's needed. Because one of the things we recognize is that a service in development is going to have a different configuration to make it act differently in development versus QA versus production. So we actually have a way to keep track of that along the process. And again, we can see where this was deployed to. The cart service went out to 2 different clusters. So you can take a view from that standpoint as well. So we can look at from a environment level. And the environment level is basically a collection of endpoints that we're going to deploy to. And in this case, these are all the components that have been deployed out there with 2 different applications. So the 4th of July and the Labor Day sale as part of that process. So depending on which view that you're looking at it from, if you're looking at it from an SRE point of view, from a DevOps engineer point of view, or developer, we give you that lens to go ahead and take a look at, from that direction, the relationships and what's happening at that level. So with that, I'm just going to open it up for questions. All right, let's go ahead and go into one more thing. So in this case, one of the things that we did was we were in a new version of our application of the 4th of July. And the one thing that's changed between the previous version, which was our base version, is just the cart service. And this is key when we're looking at the microservices catalog. We don't want to redeploy everything, or if one thing just changed, we want to keep track of the incremental changes, and Ortelius is able to do that at that level. So when we deployed to the hipster store cluster, between the version 91 and the base version, the only thing that changed was the cart service at that level. I think that was most everything that I wanted to cover. Oh, there are, you'll see here that we have actions, like that Helm chart was an action. In this case, there's a pre-action that we've put in place to resize our GKE cluster prior to deployment. We don't run our cluster all the time for our little demo sandbox environment. So we have a pre-action. I'll go off and resize the cluster at this level. This allows us an entry point to deal with if we need to run Terraform to stand something up, you know, those types of scenarios as well. And this will also link into the CI process as well, and the CD process, where if we need to go and update a status or let somebody know that something's been completed, we can go do that as part of the pre or post or custom action. And these actions exist at the component and application layers. Any questions? So let me pull up the proposal and we could walk through that. All right, there it is. So Tracy, why don't you walk through this?
Okay. So where this was born out of was the need to understand, to have some visibility into the CD pipeline when it comes to microservices. In our CI world, we have things like bill of material reports, and we have impact reports, and we have diff reports. But in a CD pipeline that is based on microservices, we don't have those things. That's when we realized we needed some level of mapping to be able to track the movement of a microservice and its impact across many, many applications across different clusters. Unlike a API registry where that information may be maintained at a cluster level, what we're doing is managing it above those clusters. So part of the difficulty with microservices in general is the complexities that's specific to that problem I just defined. Oh, my battery's running low because I forgot to plug my phone in. Hang on. Why don't you go ahead, Steve?
So one of the things that we see is with the CD Foundation that it's a perfect fit for Ortelius is because the organization, the CD tools that are in the organization, Ortelius fits into those. We do have some work to do on the Tecton side. We actually ended up doing integrations into Tecton through a third party, which was Puppet. So that's one of the things that we have to Puppet's relay. So one of the things that we're doing is really looking at expanding out those tools that are in the foundation and allowing them to be able to have the cataloging capabilities, understand what's happening from the perspective of a microservice developer, as well as like a front end or consumer developer as well, giving that visibility to those tools through Ortelius as part of the process. If we look at the central hub of the data, it's going to be agnostic to the CD tools, but provides that visibility that is needed throughout the whole pipeline process. Ortelius will provide a bill of material, difference and impact analysis reports. It'll keep track of the versions that are happening. When we get into more companies doing microservice development, we're going to end up with more and more versions of applications. Because each microservice is independently deployable, it's going to have its own pipeline and its own speed to production as part of that process. Some of the things that we're going to grab out of the CI process is the ability to really get the hook from what the developers are changing. We want to know what the developers are working on and how that's going to affect production as part of that process. The other part of it is going to be on the microservice catalog, being, like I said, being able to share this information not only in the in a single organization or company, but bring it higher up so we can have these other open source projects that are out there that are doing Kubernetes, that are doing microservices, and bring those into the hierarchy and get them organized as part of the process. One of the things
I want to mention something about that. So, you might say, well, can't you just do that in GitHub? You can store things in GitHub, and you can also share things in a container repository. But what we're doing in addition is we're tracking how to deploy it. So that deployment metadata. So for example, we track what Helm chart should be used and the key valued pairs that should be used to deploy it. So we're providing additional deployment metadata and we point to the repository where it comes from. So we're not versioning the source, that's coming from Git and we can track it all the way to Git. But the problem set that we're solving is how do you consistently redeploy a microservice across multiple clusters, even when those clusters may not be in the same organization and you might have multiple organizations consuming a open source microservice. So it creates a central repository for not just the microservice, but for the deployment information needed to consume it and use it and deploy it.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, one of the things that we did was at the environment and the endpoint level, we've actually separated out the data from definition. So You could define key value pairs, for example, for the different environments, and that will get applied at deployment time to the Helm chart. So different companies can reuse the same Helm chart without having to go and edit a values file for each stage of their life cycle. We'll just apply that metadata, those key value pairs at deployment time as part of the process. So it makes it really easy to really organize the services and get them so they can be found and not have to have people recreate the same servers over and over again. Like I said, we only want one single sign-on. We don't want 3 or 4 as part of that process. One of the things, like I said, we've built plugins into the existing CI/CD tools: Jenkins, TeamCity, CircleCI, Cloud Build, GitHub Actions, Puppet Relay. Like I said, we're going to be making a more generic one for Tecton as part of that process. Also, the ability to support not only microservices, but the hybrid world or the monolith world. When we look at a monolith, let's take a WebSphere ear file. Even if it's a WebSphere ear file that's outside of a container, for us, it's just a component and an application version. So it's a component version, which would be the ear file. And then the application is going to consume one component of that. So that's where, because of that, we're going to be able to support not only companies and users that are in the beginning of the journey to Kubernetes, for example, where they're going to go from a monolith, and they may take their monolith and put it in a container, and then take that and then run it in Kubernetes as a single replica set. We can support that through Ortelius, or if you have 1,500 or 5,000 microservices that are making up the application, it's just a matter of the number of relationships that we need to manage at that level. And Ortelius is designed to deal with those complex relationships. Let's see. And it's going to give you, whether we're focused on a single hybrid or if we're in the microservices, we're going to give you that viewpoint. And also, when we talk about components can be, like I said, like the traditional monolith. It could be a database component, test case components, a security scan can be a component, config map can be a component version. So all those pieces that make up an application can be tracked from cradle to grave as part of that process. So just to go through a quick process, you do your push. Ortelius picks up that information. We grab what's happening on the from the CI process. We'll go ahead and create those new versions of the application version and component versions I was showing you. And then we can go ahead and deploy that out to your environment. If there's already an existing deployment process in place, we'll record what that deployment process has done. And we'll push that back into the database so people can query those relationships. I think that's most of it. Some of the things that we're looking to do. So some of the things that we're looking to do is really build out that microservice domain-driven design catalog. We really want people to be able to share and collaborate when they write in microservices. We want to collect that metadata and know how things are related to each other. And also, when we talk about the CI/CD process, all this is automated. We have a few lines of code that we need to put into like a Jenkins file, for example. And the same for like on the Tecton, there's a CRD that we're working on at that level. to be able to plug these in and be able to get the benefits with minimal changes to the pipeline process. I think that's the main stuff that I wanted to cover. Any questions, and we can get into more details?
So I want to make sure we get. Oh, go ahead with that question.
Yes, Steve, I have a just small question for you. So right now people are talking about the microservices world. So might be in a starting point when we have totally 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 microservices. So they want to leverage the Kubernetes namespaces for that. Might be they want somebody give us a namespace for dev environment, dev namespace for production environment, and namespace for staging environment. And eventually somebody look care of that's my microservices is now increasing and expanding, and they want to take care of these and deploy that. We might be GKE or AKS or EKS. Does that has availability in Ortelius as well?
Yes. So one of the things that you'll see is when you have, let's take a dev namespace, a QA namespace, and a prod namespace. It's the same service. So the same microservice that's going to be deployed to those 3 different namespaces in the same cluster. Let's say we're running it that way. But it's going to be the same. In our world, we call it a component version. Now we could have 3 different versions of the same microservice running at each stage of the pipeline. So which means for a single microservice, we have 3 versions that we're tracking. Now in your example, we have 4 to 6 microservices. That means we're up to 18 different versions, combinations that we're going to need to keep track of all those relationships. And Ortelius will do that automatically. Once we have that base starting point, we'll hook into the CI/CD process and start self-maintaining what's coming down the pipeline, and knowing, this version of this component of this microservice is now running in QA, and it's tied to these 3 other versions of these other microservices as part of that process. One of the things that we are working on that has come up in the last 6 months is the need to support tightly coupled microservices. The theory behind it all was everything's loosely coupled. You can independently deploy, but working with Netflix and a couple other companies like Boeing, we're recognizing that there's sets of services that need to be tightly coupled, and we're working on building that into the relationship model.
Yeah, you would think they would just put those services in the same container, but that's not what they're doing.
Cool. Let's do one more question if there is one, and then move on to the SIG MLOps. I want to make sure we get to cover that one too today since Terry's here. Anybody else?
I had a quick question, just maybe more on the adoption side of what are you seeing in terms of people interest and looking to adopt Ortelius?
So right now, I would say that our primary customer is IT service companies like Unisys, where they have they're trying to build like a foundational level of microservices that they can reuse to create new applications for different customers. Those are the ones who came to us first. The kind of customers that we're talking to now, it seems that if they have if they have 40 microservices, they're running into problems that they can't solve. So those are the 2, I would say the 2 best ways to describe the customers who are starting to knock on our door.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is people coming to Ortelius when they're getting in, like you're saying earlier, the 4 to 6 range of microservices, that they're forward thinking enough to realize that they're going to have a configuration problem really quick. So those are the early adopters of Ortelius when they're just getting into microservices. They've got some going, and they want to go and it's working. They got 4 to 6, and now they want to go to 20. And how are they going to do that? Is where we're seeing the adoption early on. Any other questions?
All right, cool. Let's let's move on in the agenda. We've got the proposal from Steve here. I'll drop another link to it again. I'll ask all the members of the talk to take a look and comment on there. Leave any feedback you have for Ortelius, and then once that slows down, usually after just a couple days, we can call for a vote.
Well, I want to thank everybody for the time, and thank you everybody from the Ortelius team for showing up today. It was super helpful to have the support from the map makers out there.
All right, Terry, if you're still on the call, looks like you're here. Do you want to take over the screen? Perfect. Thanks for joining.
So I wanted to just start by talking a little bit about what the underlying problem is that means that we really would benefit from having a roadmap for MLOps. Now, logically, MLOps is really just an extension to DevOps. So it's just saying, well, we've got these machine learning assets that we need to carry across into our products that we're building and deploying, which are operating within conventional DevOps environments. But what's interesting is that in practice, the teams that are working with the machine learning aspects of the solution are typically teams of data scientists operating in isolation from the rest of a product development setup. And in many cases, they're teams who are pretty much fresh out of university and have perhaps never really been exposed to DevOps or CI/CD or any of that history of learning that has gone into helping us know how to deploy assets into production environments. So as a result, a lot of the work in the MLOps space, and especially around MLOps tooling, is happening completely isolated from the rest of software development. And so we're seeing a lot of having to reinvent the wheel and do things from first principles and make a lot of quite basic mistakes just to get simple assets into production environments. So the idea of the roadmap was to try and have one central place where we could properly collate all of the requirements for MLOps solutions and then communicate those to customers who want to adopt MLOps and to teams who are trying to build specialized tooling in that space, and also to go the other way and communicate to teams who are building existing DevOps and CI/CD solutions, so that everyone gets a complete picture of what is actually needed to be able to treat machine learning assets as first-class citizens in a DevOps end-to-end process. So we've been working collaboratively over the past 6 months or so to compile the first cross-cut of requirements, and those we've put together as a first draft of the roadmap document, which we've finished compiling for 2020 last month, and this is now publicly available. So there is an interesting first stab at what is MLOps and what is it not. So the document itself really introduces some of the vision for MLOps and the drivers behind the roadmap. But then primarily it's broken down into 3 main sections. So the first section tries to capture the core challenges that are involved here. So these are the fundamentals that we need to be able to address to achieve everything we need from MLOps in the future. And that's in the form of a table expanding on each of the challenge areas. Now, the second section then goes on to look at what are the technology requirements necessary to address each of those challenges, and to look in generic terms at how you might address those challenges with pieces of specific technology. And again, we're attempting to be very agnostic in terms of what systems or solutions are involved. The idea is to make this as inclusive as possible. And then finally, we take a look at the overall picture about where we are with potential solutions. And this is primarily a map giving you a feel for which areas are already fairly mature, which areas are under development, and which areas are still effectively unknowns where further research is needed, and a lot of work will be required before those solutions can be brought to the customer. So obviously there's a lot of information in here, and it's quite a chunk to absorb in one go. But if there are any specific questions that anyone has, I'm happy to try and address those.
Just want to say thanks for presenting this, and it looks like a great example of a roadmap.
So I think
Anyone
really
else?
what we need to look at next is, sorry, was there another question?
Yeah, this is Steve from Ortelius. Do you have any use cases that you're like initial use case that you're focusing on? I didn't see that in the document. So
basically, what we're looking at in the roadmap is trying to capture, if you like, multiple use cases. So each challenge is effectively one example of a problem or use case in the MLOps space.
Got it. I see how you laid it out. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then we're also trying to work with some reference implementations. So the Jenkins X project has an MLOps component, which is trying to align to the roadmap and actually provide an implementation of those capabilities. But going forwards, we've done the groundwork. We need to maintain the document, so it will need to be updated every year just to make sure we're capturing any new challenges and to update on the status of various features. But it would probably be sensible to have a communications plan around this, and to try and do some outreach, get involved in various conferences, and improve the messaging overall, so that we get plenty of visibility on the roadmap and encourage people to contribute and join in next year.
And has the foundation looked at bringing in MLOps tools like TensorFlow or any of those?
So the idea at this stage is to be completely agnostic to the ML tools themselves, but to try and work with, for example, CI/CD providers to ensure that in their tooling they're implementing the primary features that we've identified in the roadmap, so that customers are getting the capabilities that they need from their end-to-end CI/CD solution.
Also curious on that, it seems like TensorFlow would also be beyond the scope of MLOps and then be more in the scope of just pure ML tooling. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah. So we're really treating ML ops as a generic way of performing any ML activities, and we expect that a customer will want to use with multiple different underlying machine learning libraries and frameworks. And a big part of what we're setting out in the roadmap is the need to have very, very agnostic platforms that can allow you to deliver solutions that incorporate many different machine learning frameworks, and integrate those with existing software assets in production environments.
All right, any other questions? You definitely have the coolest background I've seen lately, Terry. All right, I will take over the screen share and we can go get through the administrivia stuff and other announcements. All right, my screen should be back up here. Landscape updates is the next item. Tracy, you want to chat about this one?
Let's skip this one and maybe dedicate
Sure.
some more time in a less busy meeting.
All right, I will make a note to move this one to next time. All right, this next one, project updates. Do you want to give the context on the newsletter here, Tracy, while I switch screens over?
Yes. So CDF has a monthly newsletter that comes out, and it's typically on a theme, so it might be security or ML ops. I think the upcoming one is kind of highlights of CDCon, so recaps of some of the best talks from CDCon. However, one of the things we've heard, or we've noticed certainly with folks reading the newsletter and in general from our community, is that people want to get better updates on the projects and what sort of new and noteworthy and what our project highlights. So we're going to kick off a new section, which will be project highlights for CDF projects. And not just in the newsletter, but I think we're going to look for other ways we can promote the great work happening in these projects, either through social talks or just whatever channels we can use. So to that end, it would be great to have a way to receive those updates or for folks to share them. But yeah, at the very least, this will go into the newsletter coming out next week.
And then really quickly, also on the same vein of project updates, I'm starting to work on the annual report. So I'll be reaching out to folks so that we can have a pretty robust update from each of the communities for that report as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy and Jackie. So the doc I'm sharing now is the one where we're collecting the project updates for the November newsletter. Looks like Jenkins just got filled in during this meeting. Thanks, Oleg. The other one we're... Oh, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so since this is the first newsletter with such updates, what is the time frame of updates? Because, yeah, I assumed it's approximately 1 month. But hey, if you want to take a bigger period, it's fine.
Yeah, it will be typically monthly updates, but Roxanne will, she'll be kind of curating from the list and looking how to best frame it so it comes across as interesting for users.
Okay. Thank
you. Yeah, so it looks like we're still missing Spinnaker, and here's the last one. So.
Apologize for that. I was on I was on PTO, so I'll make sure to get this done. We have a lot actually to fill in, given that we have the summit this month, which is also probably why Roz hasn't responded. She's got her plate pretty full.
Sure. All right, back to, I wish there was a faster way to switch which tab I'm sharing. Back to the agenda. Pending project requests. So this is a section where we talked about adding as kind of a recurring one to the talk meeting, but just to discuss and give projects a chance to raise any requests for help that they have or they need. We had some examples here. Tecton, a couple of the Tecton sub-projects got some awesome logos created or send out requests for logos from the LF design and graphics teams. These are always pretty fun, and contributors love seeing cool logos for the stuff they're working on. So if any of your projects are interested in logos, I think almost everybody has a logo for the top level project, but if you want kind of similar ones for sub projects or anything like that, then you can go ahead and open issues here. We've also there was a survey a while ago to collect any other kind of project infrastructure stuff that projects are using to host artifacts or run CI or anything like that. So that way we can surface all of those up at the next board meeting. So if you need any help paying for anything like that or getting credits or anything, you can either shoot an email to me and I can raise it up to the board, or we can kind of discuss it in these recurring sections. Is there any other types of things that, just to kind of get people's imagination going, that we can think of that projects could request?
Dan, just on the logos. So I think we're good to take the Tecton Hub and dashboard and move forward with those. I think the creative team is pretty familiar with spinning out the cat doing different things. So if folks want to comment on those for any other ideas, please do so. On the screwdriver logo, I think this is one for Jithin. We're actually looking for a version of the screwdriver logo which is stacked, so we can put it on our case study page so it looks nice. So I just wanted to connect, I don't know if Jithin's on the call, and whether that's something you can get us, or whether we need to kind of ask the creative services to put that together if it doesn't exist.
So I think I should be able to get that. You were looking for a stacked logo, right?
Yes. Yeah. And if you look at, I'll share a link in the chat, there's the case study page, and we have the kind of horizontal one, and it doesn't kind of match the other one. So yeah, if you could get us that, or put a pull request to the artwork folder, that would be great. We can get the website updated so it looks better.
Okay, let me reach out to our UX team, and they should be able to give me something to it. I'll reach out to you once I have something.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So from the Jenkins project side, we have a pending exploration about Docker Hub sponsorship. So Docker Hub has changed the policy. Currently, we are trying to get sponsorship from Docker for hosting our repositories. But if not possible, we would like to seek sponsorship for that. And yeah, second larger topic is rather about next year infrastructure budgets. Yeah, I know that it's a bit too early to discuss it, but it would be great to start planning for that, especially for large setups like Jenkins infrastructure.
Sure. Yeah, I know a bunch of people at Google and Microsoft and all the other companies involved in OCI are meeting with Docker Hub regularly to figure out ways to mitigate those changes. But if you could shoot an email or a doc or something just with a summary of all the images you're hosting on Docker Hub today, and then any estimates and stuff on how the changes would impact you, we can definitely start.
From what I know, our infrastructure officer, Olivier, he has already sent a message, but I can double check.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Dan, wasn't Tecton having the same issue?
I'm not aware of it. Tecton hosts everything on GCR today, the Google Container Registry.
Yeah, for some reason I thought there was something that they're running into with the catalog.
Yeah, the catalog is kind of contribution stuff that isn't hosted in the official Tecton repository, so it's possible some of that stuff is on Docker Hub.
Yeah, so that may be another one that may be affected by the same issue.
Yeah. Good point. I'll make a note to look into just the overall Docker Hub changes.
I think Vincent was the one that was running into it, or Andre.
Okay. All right, and then the last 3 minutes, white papers, Tracy.
Yeah, I'll say we've got a number of different things on the ball. The CI/CD, the interoperability working group are probably the furthest along in having a white paper where they're just looking for reviewers and any further end user case studies. And then there's a couple of kind of in progress documents which are open for comment, and we're still trying to work out how to shape these and push them out. But folks are welcome to take a look at those and comment, and just kind of reach out to either myself or the interoperability folks if you want to get more involved with any of these assets coming through.
Okay. With that, we've got 2 minutes left. Any other quick questions or anything? I think the big action item is for everyone to review the Ortelius proposal. All right, thanks, and see everyone in 2 weeks then.
Great, thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.